name's Martin Gilmore. Welcome back to my series on bluegrass rhythm guitar playing. If you haven't watched any of the videos that I've made before about the techniques of playing bluegrass rhythm guitar, it might be helpful to start there by watching those, because in this video I'm going to be referring to some of those techniques, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about those today. I put links in the description down below, so check them out if you want to. Otherwise, let's carry on. Today we're not going to be talking about the ways to play rhythm guitar, but rather kind of taking the techniques that I've taught before and weaving them together to shape a song, to what I call framing out a song, to kind of making a musical arc to what's going on in a bluegrass jam or a bluegrass ensemble. That's sort of one of the big advantages of the bluegrass guitar. Each instrument in a bluegrass ensemble has its own role, and the big role of the bluegrass guitar is kind of tying all the rhythm stuff together, creating the texture and groove of everything, and helping kind of direct traffic. Because of this, oftentimes in bluegrass ensembles, the guitar player, the singer, is also the guitar player, because it's a really useful tool to let everybody know where you're headed, what the texture of the thing that you're going to play is. And so today we're going to talk about what to think about, how to frame out a song, how to think about the arc and structure of a song in the different situations that you might find yourself as a bluegrass guitar player. In this video, I'm going to use two song examples. I'm going to play Long Journey Home and Bury Me Beneath the Willow throughout the video and kind of use those to illustrate some of the concepts that we're talking about. If you don't know those songs, don't worry. I've put the chord progressions down below so that you could follow along. I'm going to play them both in G, out of the chords in the key of G. Each of those songs has a G chord, a C chord, and a D chord in it. So if you know those chords, you can follow along today. Here we go. So let's talk about what framing out a song means. Now, this is my term and kind of the way that I think about it when I'm singing and playing any song, whether it's bluegrass or folk or whatever. It's kind of thinking about the dynamic arc, the story that I want to tell, the texture of the song. Now, since a lot of times when you're singing, you can't just tell everybody what to do. You have to kind of lead them with the guitar. For most people, if you're just starting out and you don't know what you're doing in a jam session or in whatever musical situation that you're in, it's totally fine to just play bass, strum, and kind of follow along. But that's sort of the bare minimum of what you need to do as a bluegrass guitar player or as a folk guitar player, is to play just those basic chords. If you want to be musical and help create kind of a feeling to the song, it would be learning how to use those techniques that I've taught in those other videos in combination to create something. So let me give you an example. I'm going to start by playing a bit of Bury Me Beneath the Willow with no dynamics, no shaping or anything, just the bass strum. Here we go. My heart is sad and I am lonely for the only one I love. When shall I see her? So bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree, so she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep for me. All right? Pretty simple, pretty basic. Now I'm going to add some rhythmic elements in to kind of shape the phrases and give the song some dynamics. The same thing that I just played before, but with a more sophisticated rhythm. My heart is sad and I am lonely for the only one I love. When shall I see her? So she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep for me. So There's slight differences. All that bass strum rhythm is still there, but you can hear there's kind of like punctuation, musical punctuation between the singing phrases, between the vocal phrases. There's more texture. There's a swell and dynamic so that each section kind of has a high point and all that. Framing out the song is thinking about that rhythmic dynamic, the texture of what you're playing in each section of the song and the way that it goes. Playing rhythm guitar is more than just playing the basic chords. That's kind of the bare minimum that you have to do. It's learning how to shape the song and framing it out. It's one of the things that's unique about the guitar in bluegrass. Each instrument within the bluegrass ensemble has its own role. The guitar is there to shape the texture and to help kind of add the dynamics to what's going on in the ensemble, as well as reinforcing the rhythm. It's an important instrument, as are all the instruments in a bluegrass ensemble. All right, so let's talk about some song structures in bluegrass before we get started. For the most part, with some exceptions, most bluegrass songs have a pretty common 16-bar structure. That's kind of what your ear is going to expect to hear, and most of the bluegrass songs that you're going to play are going to have that kind of structure to them. You kind of get used to hearing it. Usually, it can kind of be divided into, or each of the sections, whether it's the verse or the chorus, can usually kind of be divided into either short phrases or long phrases. It just depends on the way that the song is laid out. In the case of Bury Me Beneath the Willow, we kind of have two long phrases. Maybe we could argue there are short little breaks or small breaks in between those. Let me give you an example. So Bury Me Beneath the Willow, which you just heard, my heart is sad and I am lonely for the only one I love. That was 8 measures. So that's one long phrase that takes up half of the verse. The next phrase would be, when shall I see her? Oh, no, never, till we meet in heaven above. That's a full verse. So that's kind of divided into 2 long phrases, and we could argue maybe there's a short little break in between. Those are long phrases. Short phrases might be like Long Journey Home. Well, I lost all my money but a $2 bill. There's one phrase. Next phrase, $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. There's 8 measures. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. Another break. I'm on my long journey home. Some people count it. Some people think about how many measures there are. Some people just kind of listen to the phrases and kind of play those musically. The phrases of the song are the musical section. So a lot of times what we do with the rhythm guitar is responding to what's happening with the lyrical, the musical phrases in the song. It's important to be able to hear where those vocal phrases are and to be able to think about those small little sections. With that. The next kind of song structure level that we're going to think about are the sections of the song. Most bluegrass songs either have a verse and a chorus, and some of them have just verse, 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 verse. Very rarely, but not never, are there bluegrass songs that have a little bridge section or an alternate section. But for the most part, when you're playing bluegrass songs in a jam session, it's going to be verse, chorus, or verse, 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 verse. Most of the time, each of those sections is going to be 16 bars long. Not every chorus is the same as the verse, but oftentimes in bluegrass you have the same chord progression in the verse as what's happening in the chorus. It just depends as you're listening, but usually they're 16 bars long. So if we're listening to Bury Me Beneath the Willow and Long Journey Home, both of those songs, the verse section and the chorus section have the same chord progression. So let's do Long Journey Home. I lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. That's the chorus. Black smoke arising and it surely is a train. Surely is a train, boys, surely is a train. Black smoke arising and it surely is a train. I'm on my long journey home. Here's the chorus again. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long So that's kind of the division of the sections. You need to be thinking about the phrase breaks of every song, the section breaks of every song, because those are important things when we come to talk about the dynamics. To know a song, you need to know the chord progression, you need to know the melody of the song, and you need to be thinking about the phrase arcs, the section arcs, and the song arcs. What does that mean? We'll talk about that next. So basically, songs have kind of three arcs of dynamics that we need to be thinking about all the time when we're shaping the song. Each phrase needs to have a dynamic arc, each section of the song needs to have a dynamic arc, and then the song itself needs to have a dynamic arc. So what does that mean? Well, one of the habits that I see with people, especially if they're new players, or a lot of times even more advanced players, is when they start playing a song, they play full blast right away as soon as the song starts. That gives them nowhere to go. There's no way of having a building dynamic arc. The only way that they can go is to get quieter and then build up again. Maybe that's fine, maybe that's what you want to do, but oftentimes in a bluegrass song, you want to build towards something. You want to kind of build towards a high point, maybe towards the end of the song. That means when you start playing, you need to not be playing everything full blast. You need to be thinking about where you're starting and where you're going. Each line, each phrase needs to have that. Each section needs to have kind of a different feel and a different texture that all fits within the same groove and texture of the song. And then you need to have a point in the song where you kind of arrive at the peak of the song, find the top point or the high point, dynamic point of the song. That means you need to be thinking kind of strategically about what you're playing and where. So let's talk about the phrases first, because the phrase is the smallest section of the song, the wavelength that we want to think about. Oftentimes, there's not much that you have to do rhythmically behind what the vocals are doing in the phrase, but instead you'll kind of play some sort of punctuation in between the phrase. I lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm playing pretty normal stuff because I don't want my rhythm guitar to get in the way of what the vocals are doing. But then I might do a little cha-chinga or something in between. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. Like that. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. There I add a little bass line in because that's a lot of G, just as kind of a reminder to other players like, hey, there's a 4 chord coming. I'll add that bass line in so that they know the chord change is coming, and then I do a really big kind of phrase break because that's the big break in the section. We'll talk about that in a second. So a lot of times when I'm shaping the dynamic phrases, I'm not really shaping the phrase in the moment. I'm shaping the phrase by adding some kind of punctuation at the end, and then those things are working together to kind of shape the section. Now, it depends on what's going on in the song, which we'll talk about here in a little bit when we talk about more dynamic stuff. But for the most part, the principle that you want to have with playing the guitar is whatever you're doing on the guitar should never be in the way of the singer and the words or the instrumentalist that's taken a solo. You are there to support what's going on, not to be the focus, but you need to, whatever you're playing needs to be interesting, because a lot of times if you do something that's too repetitive, even by trying to stay out of the way, if it's too repetitive, it kind of takes everybody's focus on what you're doing with the guitar. We'll talk about that in a second too. The next sort of dynamic wavelength that you need to work with is the section. Each of the sections of a song I sort of think about as like a cinematography or cinematic scene, so that they each kind of have their texture and their function, and I try to think about what's going on with each of those sections as I'm going in order to influence what's happening with my guitar. So, for instance, when a song starts, I like to have somewhere to go. I don't want to pull all my tricks out of the hat too fast. And you don't have to. Like, because the song has just started, oftentimes that first kickoff, that first chorus, that first verse, whatever's happening right at the beginning, is already interesting because it's the first thing that's happened. So you don't have a responsibility to do much, and in order to make what I'm going to do later more interesting, oftentimes on that first verse, I'll play almost nothing. I lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. There I'm doing are adding some little tiny bass things to kind of help people know what's happening in the song, to give some markers. And then I'm also kind of adding some dynamic swells in between the phrases. When the chorus comes in, if there's harmony on a song that has a chorus, the harmony is going to be interesting too. So that kind of gets me off the hook of having to do anything fancy in that chorus section. When the next verse comes around again, we've heard the chord progression several times, or maybe the break after the first chorus. We've heard the same chord section a bunch of times, so I might start adding some other things in to kind of help out. In the solo sections, we'll talk about those. There's some tricks that I can do. So for the second verse, I might do something like, I'll just sing that verse again. Black smoke rising and it surely is a train. Surely is a train, boys, surely is a train. Black smoke rising and it surely is a train. I'm on my long journey home. Some busier bass lines, some different bass lines that maybe I've played before, just to add a little oomph to kind of boost that second verse up. Then there's another solo. I might do something different. We'll talk about what to play behind other instruments in a second. Maybe we get to the third verse. In that section, because maybe I want this to be the high point of the song, I might add a lot more rhythmic elements, as long as they stay out of the way of the vocals and they're not distracting. It's cloudy in the east and it looks like rain. Looks like rain, boys, looks like rain. Cloudy in the west and it looks like rain. I'm on my long journey home. Maybe got in the way a little bit of the vocals there, so that would be a mistake. I don't know. It's kind of up to you. The thing is, you need to be listening for what's happening in the situation and making decisions to kind of support and boost the energy of what's going on there. It just depends on the moment and the situation, and make sure that whatever you play doesn't mess up your timing. The timing has to be good. The chords have to be right. Anything that you add there for the dynamics needs to be adding. If you can't get it 100%, you shouldn't do it. You should just go back to the basic playing in those cases. Now, the arc of the whole song. You're trying to get to a place where the song has its peak. A lot of times, maybe that's the last chorus or the last verse, or sometimes people will save a big loud banjo solo for the end of the song so that there's a big energy push right at the end of the song. You're working towards that. So any of the dynamic arcs that you do previously in the song should be in service to that one. You should never have a higher dynamic peak in your first verse than you do at the highest dynamic peak of the song. You should be working towards that. So a lot of times, playing good rhythm is about being disciplined and saving the biggest chunks of everything until you need them, to giving yourself some time in order to get to where you want to get to. So making sure that you're not doing too much right at the beginning. That means you have to be thinking ahead, looking at what's going on in the jam circle. What order are the solos in? Is there going to be a banjo solo at the end? Is there going to be a guitar solo at the end? Maybe the dynamic peak of the song isn't you playing full blast. Maybe it's just something a little bit louder because the last soloist in the song is going to be the guitar player that's sitting right next to you. Just depends. You need to be thinking about what's happening in the circle and thinking about what's going on in whatever situation you're in. Let's talk about framing out the different sections. So, one of the overarching principles of this is, as a rhythm guitar player, the spotlight should never be on you playing rhythm guitar. In fact, a lot of times the best rhythm guitar players, and there are a lot of them in bluegrass music, are people who you maybe never even thought of as great guitar players. People who you never even notice what they're doing because they're so good at supporting whatever's going on. You have to kind of approach it as being sort of selfless and out of the way, making sure that whatever's happening in the song, you're providing a platform and boosting it up. That's sort of the overarching principle. Serve the song, serve the situation. That's the principle of playing the guitar. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about each of the sections of the song and what's special about them. Verses of the song are important. That's the lyrical content of the song. Oftentimes the lyrics are changing. It's the place where the story is told. And so you need to really stay out of the way of the singer. Sometimes the singers aren't very loud. You have to stay behind a quiet singer, which means you can't play loud. If you can't hear what's going on with the singer or with the soloist, you need to play more quietly. That's a good principle. If you play so quietly that you can't hear your instrument anymore, it might not be your fault. But in general, if you can't hear what's happening in that situation, you need to play quieter. Don't ask them to sing louder or play louder. Your job is to be behind them, and be behind them dynamically in a way that doesn't sacrifice the texture of the song. Just because a song is fast doesn't mean it has to be loud. Just because a song is slow doesn't mean it has to be quiet. You need to follow and match up with the dynamic of what's going on by listening to the person who's featured and responding to that and helping boost them in those cases. Verses. Lyrics are really important. The chorus. In a chorus, the harmonies are really important. So you want to make sure that you stay out of the way of the harmonies. I sort of think about it as a cinematographer, like I said before, where I want the camera to be really up close on the singer there. If we were watching a documentary of a bluegrass band, the camera is up really close on the lyricist, and I'm there just kind of providing the background. Then it zooms out a little, and you get the harmony singing. And I don't want my guitar to be in the way of that. I want it to be supporting that so that the harmony singing is really good. Maybe I'll play something more simple and sort of help reinforce the harmony singer so that they can hear the parts and stay out of the way of that way. The other thing about choruses is that they repeat. So there are many times throughout the song where the chorus is going to happen again. And so a lot of times I'll try to play something really simple, and then when the chorus comes around again, I don't want to add in the same bass line or do the same thing unless it's something really basic. So I try to think about little ways that I can tweak it to help support the chorus and also stay out of the way in those things. Breaks are where things get really difficult. So one of the things about breaks, and we're going to talk about this next, but one of the things about breaks is each instrument sort of requires you to play rhythm guitar in a different way. In a jam session, if you're playing the guitar, you should be paying attention to how the movement is going around the circle. What instrument's going to be coming next? How can I play and reinforce that player in the moment and in that situation? Maybe it's the first song of the jam. You don't know yet. There's some basic principles which we'll talk about behind each instrument, but you need to be ready to respond. If you think that a mandolin player is going to be quiet and all of a sudden they're loud, you can boost the energy up right away. You can never be flying on autopilot when you're playing rhythm guitar. Your entire job is to respond to the situation in the most supportive way possible, to be thinking about what can I play next that will support this situation? What do I want to hear next in this situation? That always needs to be going on in your mind, and you need to be responding to that. A couple of other sections in the song are the kickoffs and the ending or the tag of the song. The biggest thing to remember is in the kickoff, don't overplay. Don't play too loud. Just start playing and respond to what's going on. If it's a banjo kickoff and it's super loud, you can play a little bit louder and you support it. And then when the verse comes in, you automatically quiet down. In the chorus, it's going to be a little bit louder, but also you want to support the singers, so you maybe swell up a little bit dynamically and so on. At the tag, the end of the song, you need to finish with intention. There are a lot of different kinds of tags in bluegrass, but the most standard one is what my old bass player called a 7 ending, where it might be, I'm on my long journey home, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's kind of a standard one. So, on my long journey home. Something along those lines. You can play a standard G run within that space and it fills the same space. I'm on my long journey home. That's kind of a standard ending. When in doubt, you can probably just dive in on that, and if you're wrong, well, that happens. You'll know better next time. There's another sort of standard ending, which sometimes you'll hear people say. They might say a Jimmy Martin ending, which is basically the guitar just strums the G chord, and then when you hear the G run, everybody stops, and there's usually a fast stop on the last note, so it would be something like this. Well, I'm on my long journey home. You just listen for the G run. And that's kind of another standard ending that you might hear, but usually people will tell you that that's going to happen. So those are some things to think about. Intentional kickoffs, don't overplay, but start playing and match the energy of the kickoff, and then come down for that first verse and play less. Give yourself somewhere to go, and then the tag, finish with intention. Now let's talk about what to do when you play behind different instruments in a jam or ensemble. All right, There are pretty much 5 standard instruments within bluegrass, and then some other ones that you run into occasionally. The first one is kind of the iconic instrument of bluegrass music, which is the banjo, and specifically the banjo played in an Earl Scruggs style. Now, there are lots of other styles of banjo playing. Another common one would be clawhammer playing, which oftentimes isn't as loud. Sometimes it is, depends on the situation. But a Scruggs style banjo, a resonator banjo played in a Scruggs style, is often a very loud instrument, usually like one of the loudest instruments in the bluegrass band. But let's think about how they play. In a Scruggs style banjo, usually what they're doing is interlacing eighth note rolls over the measure. So they're going tucka 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 tucka. So as a guitar player, I want to be able to boost the texture of that and allow them the emphasis of that. So in one of the videos that I've shot about the basic bluegrass strum, you have a bass strum, which are the quarter notes, and then sometimes if you want to add emphasis, you can add in upstrokes, which are on the eighth notes, which sound like this. If you add that second, that down up strum in, you're kind of stepping on the sonic space of the banjo, because the banjo's going ducka 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 ducka, and so the thing that I would recommend doing behind a banjo is to play really straightforward quarter notes to help kind of reinforce their eighth note thing and give them support. A lot of times, because the banjo is so loud, you can play with a higher volume. A lot of times banjo solos have a lot of energy, so it's a place where you could add bass lines, kind of maybe even full run bass lines instead of the halftime bass lines. You could do like, I lost all my money but a $2 bill, $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. Now, we don't have a banjo here to hear that, but playing a really strong bass strum rhythm with some of those walking bass lines and emphasizing those phrase breaks would be a great way to support the banjo. Oftentimes in instrumentals, just in general, it's helpful for the guitar, depending on the situation, helpful for the guitar to help kind of roadmap what's happening in the sections. It's easy in an instrumental break when people get to improvising. Some people are great improvisers. Some people play the melody pretty straightforward. Some people get lost and are experimenting. Totally fine if they get lost and experiment in a jam session. As a guitar player, you can help everybody kind of remember where they're supposed to be by adding those emphases between the phrases, maybe those bass lines when the chord is going to change. It just helps people reinforce it. That's important to know the structure of the song so that you can help be the leader and help guide people around in those situations. So to go back behind a banjo, doing just a basic bass strum, and adding some emphasis in, and you can play usually a little bit louder. That doesn't mean all banjo players are loud. Some banjo players, maybe they're not that loud. You have to listen and respond to what's going on in the moment. Just because you play one way behind one banjo player doesn't mean that you play that same way behind the next banjo player. It should be different for every banjo player or every person that you play behind. You got to be listening, be in the moment. The next instrument that's sort of another iconic instrument of bluegrass is the mandolin. Now, the mandolin is oftentimes very different than the banjo, depending on the style of the mandolin player. But the thing about the mandolin is many mandolin players don't play very loud, or their instrument is not very loud. So when a mandolin solo happens, you oftentimes have to bring the volume way, way down. The other thing about the mandolin is it plays in an octave that's much higher than the guitar. So a lot of times behind a mandolin solo, it's a good place to add some bass notes, because you're not going to be colliding or clashing with anything that they're going to be playing. You're going to be playing in a different range as them. Now, I say this with caution. You should never be playing bass lines that are distracting from someone else's solos, that are causing people to pay attention to the rhythm guitar rather than the mandolin solo. But you can add a different texture. So with mandolin solos, or with any solo in general, usually I don't play full-time bass lines, meaning I'm not playing quarter notes in the measure. I'm playing half-time bass lines, where I might play in Long Journey Home. I lost all my money but a $2 bill, $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. we don't have a mandolin here, but I'm just playing some pretty basic bass strum things, adding some moving bass notes in there to kind of reinforce what's happening with the mandolin. Again, you oftentimes have to be really dynamically quiet behind a mandolin player because they're not very loud. Not always. Some mandolin players are really loud. It just depends. The other thing is there's lots of different kind of styles of playing mandolin. There's sort of a more eighth note, maybe they play like Adam Steffi, where they have lots of eighth note runs, in which case that down up strum is going to be in their way, so I might not play that way behind a mandolin player. Sometimes they might play in a more syncopated Bill Monroe style mandolin, where there's lots of downstrokes and they're sort of playing triplets or syncopated stuff, in which case it might be helpful to them to have a really straightforward rhythm because it highlights that juxtaposition of the rhythm that they're playing. It sort of depends. You have to listen to the player. What are they doing? How can you respond to that in a way that supports them and highlights what they're doing there? That oftentimes means you have to change in the moment, in the phrase, and do something different. Even if you had started an idea, if your idea clashes with what they're doing, you should back off immediately and go back to even just that basic bass strum thing. You always have to be listening and paying attention to what's going on in the ensemble. The next iconic instrument of bluegrass is the fiddle. Now, the fiddle is quite different than the other instruments in bluegrass because it's the only instrument that's not played with a pick, that's not a plucked string. And that means that if it wants to play a long note, that note can be sustained the whole time, and in fact that note can get even louder. So a lot of times fiddle players use that to their advantage. They'll play these long notes and then followed by these maybe intricate eighth note phrases, but a lot of times it's kind of these interlaced long notes or double stop runs that are very unique. That means behind a fiddle you might have more opportunity to play that eighth note thing because it juxtaposes and supports what they're doing. You provide a cool rhythm, and then that kind of highlights what the fiddle is doing. Oftentimes behind a fiddle you might do that down up strum, or maybe even some in the phrase breaks you might do some kind of galloping strum or something that breaks it up. So it might be do 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 do. That might be a good way to kind of support the fiddle. Again, it depends on what the fiddle is doing. Some fiddle players like to play a lot of active eighth notes. If they're doing that, you don't want to be in their way. But sort of just in general, if you don't know what's happening, these are kind of principles that you can apply. The next solo is a mandolin player. Haven't heard how they played. I'm going to play quietly. I'm going to emphasize bass notes. The next instrument is a fiddle. I don't know how they play. I'm going to play more eighth note things until I figure out what's going on, and then respond and change if they need me to. I think one of the hardest instruments to play rhythm behind in a bluegrass jam or in a bluegrass ensemble is the guitar, especially as a guitar player, because you're in the same range as that instrument. The functionality of your instrument is the same as theirs, and so that could be pretty challenging. So one of the things that I oftentimes do when I'm playing the guitar and there's a guitar solo coming, I immediately play super quiet because the guitar is a really quiet solo instrument in a bluegrass situation, and I play really simple and try to stay way out of their way. If they start playing start on the low notes in their solo, I'll stop emphasizing the bass notes when they're playing and kind of just emphasize the offbeats on the strums, or maybe play more down up strum things, but not playing the bass notes. If they start by playing up high and playing the solo up here, I'll emphasize the bass notes quietly, but usually I'm just trying to stay as much out of the way as I possibly can, playing really quiet and playing really basic, simple stuff. Maybe if I feel like they're getting lost or something, I might add in some quiet bass lines like that. Got to really pay attention to what's going on when there's a guitar solo, play really quietly, and work really hard to stay out of their way. You don't want to be playing a bunch of moving bass lines while somebody's playing a guitar solo because it really clashes with their solo. Same thing with an instrument like the dobro. Now, the dobro's played with a slide. It's slightly different, but it's in the same range as the guitar. So as a guitar player, you can really get in the way of a dobro player if you emphasize the wrong kind of notes. You have to be listening for what's going on and really working hard to stay out of the way. The thing about the dobro is oftentimes just the different attack, the sliding attack of the notes really sets it apart from other instruments. And so you might have more freedom to do more bass strum or down up strum in the same way that you would play behind a fiddle, but maybe not. You have to really respond to what's going on. That's the same thing with other instruments. Sometimes at a jam session, somebody will show up with a harmonica or with an accordion. I've definitely seen that happen. Those are not the traditional instruments of bluegrass, really, but they're instruments that folks who are interested in bluegrass might play. They might bring them to the jam session. You, as a guitar player, have to really respond to what you think needs to be happening in that situation. How can you stay out of the way? A harmonica, the characteristics of it are very similar to the fiddle. It can play long notes, sustained notes. Those notes can get louder, and so a lot of times you can do a lot of down, up strum behind it. Same thing with an accordion. There are lots of other instruments. I put in the comments what instruments you've seen at a jam session that maybe are not standard bluegrass instrumentation. It depends on the jam. Sometimes people don't like that. Sometimes it's totally open to everybody. It just depends on that situation. You, as a guitar player and a good musician, should be able to respond in the moment for each instrument that's taking those solos. Be thinking about what's going on in the circle. What's coming next? How can I build all that stuff into the dynamic arc of the song and give myself someplace to go? How can I make sure that I'm not doing the same repeated thing over and over and over again that's distracting from everybody's solo? You're there to support everyone. I always tell people, you're the canvas that the painting is painted on, not the painting itself. You're there to support what's happening, not be the feature of what's happening, and that requires you to be really in the moment and listening to what's going on. The next step would be roadmaps and landmarks. Now, I mentioned this a little bit before. In each solo, because bluegrass is improvisational music, oftentimes people are given the advice that they're supposed to play the melody of the song, which is something that I definitely believe in. You should learn to play the melody of the song, but not everybody does that, and it's their turn to take a solo, and maybe they go way out on a limb and try something and they get lost, and that's totally fine. Your responsibility and role as a rhythm guitar player is to help people kind of find their way back and help support the group kind of lacing everything together. Now, I will say this as a caution. Messing up the timing is a really big mistake. If you mess up a chord, if you mess up the melody, not such a big mistake. But if you mess up the timing of a song in a jam session, then everybody tries to readjust to find their way again. And when they do that, everybody readjusts in a different way. And oftentimes that's a place that a jam session can really come apart. As a bluegrass guitar player, if I really know the song, that's a place, if I feel the wheels are coming loose or everybody's kind of losing the timing, I might give a little volume boost or like a strong bass line, even if it clashes just for a moment with the soloist, to help everybody get back on track, to give them a landmark, a roadmap for them to follow. It helps the group stay together. When you're the singer, that's a really helpful way of kind of leading everything around. Now, you need to be confident in the rhythm of what's going on and in the rhythm of the solos. Another kind of challenging thing that happens with bluegrass is sometimes the solos are a different length than what's going on in the verses. It's pretty common that the singers in bluegrass songs might stretch some of the notes out, and then they might shorten some of the notes in the verses, or sorry, in the breaks, just because they want to have the energy be boosted, and they'll allow the singer to draw that out. That stuff happens. You have to be listening and know what's going on. Oftentimes, if I want to provide a roadmap for people in an ensemble situation, I'll use bass lines to kind of lead people through the chord progression. I'll use those swells at the phrase break so everybody kind of knows this is the middle of the verse. I might emphasize the downbeats to know it so everybody knows where everything starts. Because sometimes at the end of a solo, or at the end of the verse, at the end of the chorus, going into a break section, people might be curious about where to start. I'm on my long journey home. Maybe the soloist isn't paying attention. I give them a nod, and then I might give them a really strong downbeat so that they know your solo has started right here, and then everybody can follow the chart that way. That's an important thing to do. Don't do it if you're wrong. You got to listen to what the soloist is doing. If you are the soloist, an important thing to know is a really strong kickoff, really strong pickup notes will help everybody reinforce you with their rhythm more solidly. That's a lot of things to think about, but something to pay attention to. So when you're playing rhythm guitar behind the soloists, oftentimes you kind of your ears have to be in two places. You have to be thinking about the structure of the song, singing the melody in your head, and also listening to what's going on with that soloist. If they get lost and the rest of the group has followed the soloist, Sometimes it's not worth you fighting back. Go where everybody else has gone. If everybody else seems to be totally lost and you can hear where the soloist is, help reinforce that soloist. And sometimes there's a little give and take there. Those are strange situations. It's great if everybody knows what's going on. G runs can be helpful punctuation marks of, I'm at the end of the solo section. Everybody knows that that's the end of the thing, and then the singer could start again. Oftentimes, between the break and the verse, the singer might not come right in at where they're supposed to be. And so usually the habit with everybody playing rhythm is you should play the one chord until the singer is ready to sing. You just stay there until the singer gives the sign, and then it starts up again. You as a guitar player can kind of help lead that around using the tools that I've talked about in those other videos. Bass lines, strong downbeats, G runs, dynamics, swelling in between the phrases. That all can kind of help keep things together. It's a roadmap. It's a landmark. If you're the singer, that stuff can be really helpful for helping people know where to go and support your song. All right, so let's talk about one of the most complex things about playing rhythm, and one of the things that I think people really struggle with, and that is every situation that you're playing rhythm guitar in is going to be different. Even if you're playing in a band and you've rehearsed the songs and you do pretty much the same thing every time, each situation might require you to do a different thing to kind of support what's going on. That means you have to actively be listening for what's happening in that moment. How does the room sound? How's everybody feeling? What's the situation for that moment? There are lots of different situations where you might play music. There are jam session situations. There are different kinds of bands and ensemble situations. That could be for jam sessions too. Some jam sessions have 25 people. Some jam sessions are just you and a buddy. Sometimes you're playing solo. Sometimes you're playing in a performance and the rooms might be different. The way I would play on a festival stage might be different than the way I would play in an orchestra hall or at a house concert. I might do different things because the room allows me to do different things or calls on me to do different things because what I would normally do maybe doesn't work perfectly well in that. Let me give you some examples about this. So, I teach at Swallow Hill Music Association in Denver, Colorado. We have 2 concert halls in that facility. There's Tuft Hall, which is a small, about 100-person listening room, and then we have a larger room that seats maybe 300 or 400 people called Daniels Hall. They're different in the same building. Tuft Theater is a small, intimate venue. It's not super reverberant. It doesn't have a lot of reverb within the venue, but you can really hear every note is just perfectly crystal clear. You don't need that much sound boost or anything like that. So I can play all sorts of intricate things on my guitar. Everybody on stage can hear what's going on. It's a great spot to play music. Daniels Hall, also great. But the stage situation is really dead. It's hard to hear from one side of the stage to the other side of the stage. And so when I play bluegrass music in Daniels Hall, oftentimes I have to be responsible for more of the rhythm than I am for the intricate, dynamic or textural things, just because that room calls for me to play a different way. I've played in venues, festival venues, where maybe the sound is bouncing off the back of the venue, or it's bouncing off of a building off in the distance, and you hear what's called a slapback. And so there's a real chance when you hear that slapback that the timing might get off in the group because it makes it really hard to listen. And so as a guitar player, I might help reinforce just the basic rhythm to help fight against that slapback in those situations. I've played in some concert halls that are very reverberant, where there's lots of reverb, there's lots of response, and so playing really hard bass strum rhythm makes it get really muddy in there. And so I have to play even behind a banjo much more quietly because the reverb in the room just calls for it. Every individual situation that you're in requires you to play differently and think about how to play differently in that moment while also constructing that dynamic arc and reinforcing the group that you're in. That means you have to be in the moment. There's no autopilot when you're playing rhythm guitar. You have to be thinking about what needs to be happening now. What do I want to hear next? How can I support this person? How can I make this situation good? Your job is to serve the song, serve that situation. Jam sessions. A lot of jam sessions are in breweries or coffee shops. Those are noisy places with a lot of hard surfaces. Oftentimes in breweries, as people drink more beer, maybe they get louder and they start talking louder and it gets harder to hear and they keep trying to talk over the music. Sometimes it's a fight back and forth between those instrumentalists. In those cases, I might forego all the creative stuff I would want to do and play a really solid basic rhythm in order to support the jam session to make sure everybody's having a good time. Some jam sessions have lots and lots of guitars. Guitar is a common instrument that's played in a lot of genres of music. A lot of people who play guitar want to come experiment with bluegrass before they maybe discover other instruments. And a lot of people just have guitars because they're common. So a lot of times in the jam session, you have lots of guitars all playing rhythm together, which means when I play rhythm as a guitar player, if I think that it's too busy and everybody's trying to do too much, I'll back off and just play a basic bass strum rhythm just to make that situation better, because I don't want to add to the clutter, if that makes sense. I'm constantly asking myself, what do I want to hear next? What does this situation require? And then using the tools that I have at hand to kind of help support that. And there's a lot of things. You have to be very mindful. You have to really sit down and assess what's going on in that situation and then choose how to play. All right, now let's put this all together. I don't have a bluegrass band at my disposal today, so we're going to have to use our imaginations. Sorry about that, but I'm going to play Long Journey Home, and I'm going to call out the instruments as we go along through the instrumental sections, and then try to play rhythm behind how I would normally respond to those instruments. So, Long Journey Home, we'll start with the banjo kick. 1, 2, 3, diddle-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Here's the chorus, so I'm going to back off. Well, I lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. Here's the verse, I'm going to really back off. Well, black smoke arising and it surely is a train. Surely is a train, boys, surely is a train. Black smoke arising and it surely is a train. I'm on my long journey home. Well, I lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. Here's the mandolin. Quiet because it's a quiet instrument. Cloudy in the west and it looks like rain. Looks like rain, boys, looks like rain. Cloudy in the west and it looks like rain. I'm on my long journey home. Well, I lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. Here's the fiddle. Wanna go home, boys, wanna go home. Dark and raining and I wanna go home. I'm on my long journey home. Yes, I lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. Here's the guitar. Be really quiet and try to stay out of its way. followed by a banjo solo. Last chorus, I lost all my money but a $2 bill. $2 bill, boys, $2 bill. Lost all my money but a $2 bill. I'm on my long journey home. Yes, I'm on my long journey home. There you go. So, that was the whole kind of arc. If I was imagining myself in a jam situation, if I was in a real jam situation, I might play it differently depending on how the instrumentalist played. But kind of in general, that's a way to think about it. You could see I made a real effort to not play every section exactly the same. There's a lot of G chord in Long Journey Home. It's a lot of the same stuff. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to make each little section slightly different. If I play a full walk-up bass line, I don't want to do that in every section because people get distracted by that. They come to expect to hear that walk-up bass line, and they kind of get hypnotized by it, and it distracts from what the solo is. Unless it's a song like 9-Pound Hammer, which has a walking bass line that's part of the song. I try not to do the same thing in 2 sections in a row just because I don't want it to be distracting for what's going on. Respond in the moment, support the song, and think about the structure and dynamic arc of what you're doing. Serve the situation. All right, this is a thing that I want to talk about that's kind of hard, but I think is important, and it's sort of the secret of being really good at playing bluegrass and any kind of folk music, and that is just knowing lots of songs. I really believe in being repertoire driven in what you're practicing. In fact, I'm going to do a whole video series on being repertoire driven in repertoire practice, etc., learning a bunch of songs essentially and the advantages to that. But the more bluegrass songs that you know, the more confident you can be in framing out the song in the right way because you might already know it. A lot of times there's real similarities between different bluegrass songs, and so knowing a bunch of songs can be helpful of predicting what might be coming next on a song you haven't heard. Also, there's a lot of kind of special circumstances and special like nuance things or cultural things that happen in certain bluegrass songs. So if the more songs you know, the more you know those special things, and the better you can be at reinforcing that rhythm guitar playing. So you should all be working on learning a new song every single week. I really believe in that. If you can learn a new song every single week, that's 50 songs a year. You can become a really good bluegrass player just by knowing a bunch of songs. And if you know a bunch of songs, especially if you're a singer, people want to play music with you, and that means you get better because you're playing music with people. So learn lots of songs. Really be repertoire driven. Create a notes app on your phone. Carry around a notebook. Write down songs you hear in jams. Write down songs you hear on recordings that you want to learn, and every week be working on learning something new. If you go to a regular jam every week, make it a goal to bring a new song every week to play in that jam session. I'll talk more about that in a future video series. All right, now I want to talk about just a couple of special circumstances that might happen when you're playing rhythm guitar, playing in a jam session that we didn't cover. But that are important. Not every bluegrass song is a 16-bar structure, and in fact, some bluegrass songs are crooked. They have half measures or extended measures here and there. Those are things that you kind of have to know, and some of those songs are pretty standard. Songs like Down the Road comes to mind that has a half measure as part of the song. It's sort of a thing that you can feel and you can emphasize. If you're playing like a lot of Carter family songs or songs by Jimmy Rogers, and somebody calls those songs, they might play them crooked. There might be added beats or dropped beats. If you're playing old-time music, oftentimes there's special circumstances in playing rhythm. Sometimes that means added beats. Sometimes the phrases are extended, etc. You really have to be listening for those things. So you can't always depend on flying on autopilot for that 16-bar structure. Sometimes there are some songs that have kind of a 20-bar form where maybe the last line is repeated or there's something extended, and you have to respond to those phrases. You really got to be listening, and that's sort of why learning a lot of songs is helpful in those things. The other special circumstance is there are songs in bluegrass where the singer has a lot more freedom than what the instrumentalist is doing. So you have to be paying attention in the solos, because sometimes the solos might be shortened based on against what the singer has been doing. You just got to keep your ears open, respond in the moment, and be flexible and think about that stuff. And the more songs you learn, the more you find out those special circumstances. And some of those special circumstances in those songs are what makes them really special. It can be really fun, but you got to be paying attention. All right, so some final takeaways from this video. The biggest one is you can't be playing on autopilot. Just because you know the chord progression of the song, just because you're playing bass strum, that's not enough. To make music, you have to be present in the moment. Music is meant for you to be right here, right now, making music with these people in this situation. It's the thing that makes it most special, and you need to be part of it. You need to be thinking about how you can shape each song, shape each phrase, shape each section of the song, and contributing to the groove and texture and dynamic arc of what you're doing. You need to make sure that you're there to serve the music in the situation that you're in. Just because you play it one way at your house doesn't mean you should play it that way at a jam session. Whoever has called the song, you need to reinforce their version. Be there to serve the song in that moment. Be there as the canvas that the painting is painted on, as the cinematographer, not the actor. The spotlight's not on the rhythm guitar. You are there supporting everyone else. That needs to be your number one thing. Basically, as a rhythm guitar player, you need to be there to make everyone around you sound better, to help them play the best music that they can possibly play in that moment, at that time. And if you can do that for everyone else, then you're doing it for yourself. You're making the best music that you can in those situations. If you have any questions or comments, put them down below. Love to answer questions. And good luck out there. Keep playing rhythm guitar and have fun playing the bluegrass music. It's the best.